Hi everyone, I'm Charlotte Rediker and I'm here with Eli Moyce as your co-host for Globe Z, where we're going to be discussing international relations, foreign affairs, and everything that comes along with them.
So as many of you may have heard, it's Corona time. COVID-19 belongs to the coronavirus family, a family of diseases that have very similar symptoms, including fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath. Many people claim that coronavirus and COVID-19 are similar to the flu, but in reality they're much worse. COVID-19 is highly contagious, very fatal, and most scientists around the world don't really know a lot about it, which makes it very terrifying. We've had coronavirus before, including SARS and MERS, but they've never been as widespread as coronavirus. As of March 26th, there are more than 470,000 people who have tested positive for coronavirus, and this number is only going up rapidly. Not to mention the fact that this figure probably isn't even accurate, as the availability of test kits has been spotty to say the least. All of this only slightly concerns health experts around the world, and some of you may be saying, great, an early end to an already terrible world. And I completely agree. I love to see competition between global climate change and coronavirus to see who can destroy the human race first, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. Coronavirus began in Wuhan, a city in the Hubei province of China. Some reports say that the Chinese government knew about coronavirus in as early as December, but did nothing about it. And like the new Star Wars movies, it just went downhill from there.
While the virus has slowed down a little bit in China, it's still raging around the rest of the world, with people in quarantine pretty much everywhere, and the US just topping China for most cases. These quarantines range from community efforts to countrywide lockdowns, like in Italy, where nothing's open except grocery stores and pharmacies. Grocery stores have also seen some pretty big shortages, particularly in toilet paper and canned goods. One very angry Italian guy took to the internet to give a little bit of a rant about the fact there's no more pasta on the shelves, which in Italy is a disheartening tragedy. Now, I'll be back soon after a quick ad. Schools have also been closing all around the world, and don't worry, I am not complaining about finally having the chance to get some sleep for once, and of course to reread all of Harry Potter. But shutdowns have also caused some pretty big issues. Travel's had to be basically completely cut off because people are terrified of getting the virus, and also government restriction. So that causes some pretty big economic issues. Also, with supply chain cutoffs, and then with people being pretty much unwilling to leave their house, the economy is really struggling. The US Federal Reserve responded to this by cutting interest rates to 0%, and the US just passed some legislation for a $2.1 trillion rescue package, with the Fed being able to add an additional $4.5 trillion to that. That is a lot of money.
Speaking of the US, the issues are truly unbounding there. The United States government decided to create their own Made in America test kits when the World Health Organization offered to provide them with kits that they already knew worked. Long story short, the American test kits did not work at all, slowing down and delaying the testing process even more than it already had been. Now the United States government claims that tests are ready to go, but the availability of these kits are still a little sketchy. To learn more about this week's issue, Charlotte talked to an expert. Charlotte?
Thanks, Eli. Today I'm here with Mr. Tom Boyke. Mr. Boyke is Director of the Global Health Program and Senior Fellow for Global Health, Economics, and Development at the Council on Foreign Relations, and he's also the author of the recent book, Plagues and the Paradox of Progress, Why the World is Getting Healthier in Worrisome Ways. Mr. Boyke, it's a pleasure having you on the show. So globally, we've seen countries take a few different approaches to combating coronavirus. So what are the main approaches, and what are the benefits and downsides of each?
Great. So I would put them really in two broad buckets in terms of how countries have responded to this virus. 100% of the countries that have been successful in controlling the outbreak of this virus early and really reducing the number of cases and the number of deaths have largely done it all in the same way. So they aggressively tested early. They identified people who were infected They were able to track the people that those infected people had been in contact with to try to get a sense of whether or not it had spread. They traced those people. They quarantine people coming from areas where you might have high number of infected people. They did social distancing, all of it pretty proactively. So those countries are Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, territories like Hong Kong, all did this and did this quite effectively. And then there's everybody else. And unfortunately, the US is in the everybody else bucket currently, where we don't have a good sense of how many people are infected. Because of that, it's difficult to be very targeted in our response. And largely, the only option still available to us is to shut the system down as much as possible to try to suppress people from getting sick. The thing to understand is this virus increases exponentially for each person who has it. On average, a little bit over 2 people will get it from that person. That means it's doubling currently at a rate of about every 2 or 3 days. And because it takes you about 3 weeks to actually get seriously ill from the virus, that exponential growth in cases hits the health system like a wave. So all we can do for countries that haven't identified the cases early is try to reduce the number of people that are getting affected to 1 or ultimately less than 1, so it's not spreading, by getting everybody to stay in their homes and to try to prepare our health system for that wave that is coming.
So how do you expect coronavirus to play out in the long run?
The only way this stops, the virus itself is going to be spread worldwide, and there will be pools of it all the time. It's already more than 500,000 cases globally in most countries of the world. So what that means is there will always be a risk of cases coming. The only thing that will protect us as a population are one of 2 things happening. The first is that at least 50% of us have gotten the virus and have become immune to it, which will reduce its ability to spread. The second is an effective vaccine. The first is, or even an effective treatment can help too, but in that case, it's really helping with the first problem, which is having lots of people survive their experience with the virus. The first is really important if we're going to rely on immunity, that we don't all get sick at the same time, because our health systems can't handle it. So it's really important that and everybody has heard the term flatten the curve, but the notion is just that we spread out the number of people getting sick at the same time, because our capacity to treat them is about that thin.
And what does this look like in terms of the global economy?
Right now this is a problem of both supply and demand, that basically our suppliers have shut down and the consumer demand for things have shut down and the economy has largely shut down, but people's balance sheets aren't that bad. Things could theoretically, and this is actually what has happened in most outbreaks, when you've reduced it, things can go potentially relatively quickly back to normal, provided the underlying fundamentals haven't been distorted. What's hard in this case is how long does this go on for? How well are we supporting people? And does it start to have all those knock-on effects of your parents or your neighbor or people down the street starting to lose their jobs, and all the bad consequences that happen when you have that happening at a large scale.
Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Check out our Instagram, _GlobeZ, and our website, theglobez.com. Bye, guys.